Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to start the meeting. It's 5 o'clock. We're going to start the meeting for the Community Preservation Committee, October 23rd, 2025. Let me start out with reading the chairperson's statement. This meeting is being recorded by the Community Preservation Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Seeing none, we will move on. We'll call this meeting to order and we'll do a roll call of the members. Becky.
Here.
Donna, don't think she is here. Okay. Wisty.
Here.
Garth.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Victor.
Here.
Travis.
Here.
Jack.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. So let's move forward. On the minutes for September 25th, do I have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes as written.
Do I have a second? Okay. Is there any discussion of those minutes from anybody? I just have to comment that Sarah did a great job. You know,
Always.
anything else? Okay, then I will call the roll on accepting the minutes. Becky.
Here, yes. Sorry.
Wisty.
Yes.
Garth.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Victor, I think you would abstain.
Abstain.
Yeah. Travis.
Yes.
Jack.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, moving on. Okay, is there anyone from the public here who wishes to make a statement, a general statement? This would not be specific to any proposal. Seeing none, we will move on. On to new business. And the first part of new business is to welcome our new member, Victor Michella, from the Planning Board. Welcome.
Yay.
Thank you. And what I'd like to do is just ask everybody to kind of introduce themselves and if they represent a particular part of the grand number of organizations, the city organizations that we represent, or if you were just a representative appointed by a particular part of the city. So let's start, Sarah, let's start with you and we'll go around.
Hi, I am Sarah. I am the Secretary of the Historical Commission and I serve in that role here on the CPC.
Becky George, I'm appointed here by the mayor.
And Wisty Rohrbacher. Susan, am I a mayor appointment or a council appointment?
I think you're a mayoral
A
appointment.
mayor appointment.
Travis Drury, I am a member of the Conservation Commission and appointed by the Conservation Commission.
Susan Work-Aftig, I'm a council appointment.
I'm Anna Oltman. I'm the administrative help for the committee from the city.
Garth.
I'm Garth Schoenfeld. I'm the Antifa appointment to the committee. I'm
Jack?
pretty sure it's a mayoral Antifa committee.
I think you are a mayoral Antifa.
I'm not putting that in the minutes.
No, I think that's not a good idea. Jack.
I'm Jack Redmond. I am the executive director at the Greenfield Housing Authority, and I am the Greenfield Housing Authority's appointment.
Victor, by statute, and both by the state statute, actually, there is a requirement that the various groups that we are representing are part of this committee, which includes the planning board. The one group that is not represented here, Donna Dussel, who represents the Recreation Commission. Welcome, and if there are any questions that come up during the day, please feel free to ask any of us because we're not very formal here. Okay. Vote to approve change to the scope of fiscal year 2025 Connecticut River Conservancy Project. Would you like to explain?
Yeah, so this was a project that was approved by you guys for last year, and in their quarterly report, which they duly submitted, they mentioned that some things have changed with their funding. And so they're looking to allocate some of the budget line items, not adding anything new to the project, but just things have become more expensive than they originally were. And we actually have Sam Stegman from the Conservancy here, if you want to explain basically what happened and what you plan to use the funds for.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me over there? Okay. Yes, I was thinking I could read our update from the report because I'm guessing you all have not had the opportunity to see it, and that just spells it out. Okay. So this is we have not expended any of the funds yet. We've been in the planning process, and this is an explanation of the proposed shift. Upon receiving grant funding from the CPC, which by the way was $45,984, and from our two other funders, in the Connecticut River Conservancy engaged a historic preservation consulting firm called Epsilon Associates to assist us in preparing a submittal to the Massachusetts Historic Commission, which we have to do because we have a preservation restriction with them. This submittal detailed how every aspect of our multi-year project would meet Massachusetts Historic Commission standards for historic preservation. A few months later, in September, we were informed that everything we proposed was approved, with the exception of the windows that we had specified. Even though the windows are not facing the street, they're facing the two alleys and basically the back of the movie theater. Even though they're not facing the street, we are required to match the original circa 1836 window design, which is 6 panes over 6 panes, and wood windows. Installation of these wood windows that meet this standard will be a great deal more expensive since they do not use fire-rated glass and therefore may require significant upgrades to our sprinkler system or fire shutters. And the windows themselves are more expensive too. So our plan is to go forward with the window project as it is the cornerstone of returning the building to its former glory, creating a community accessible meeting space and kitchen while reclaiming the building's original window openings that have been bricked in for many years. We have the funding, the contractors, and the permissions in place to complete the windows portion of the project as planned, despite its budget now being more than double the 35,000 we had budgeted. So 35,000 was this like, it's 10 windows and 1 exterior door on the second floor. And we had said 35,000 based on an estimate from our builder, Renaissance Builders, but that was before we found all this out. This extra cost will require us to pause other aspects of our project while we seek additional funding. We would like to use the full $45,984 of CPC funds toward the windows portion of the project. We are happy to provide documentation of the many steps that inform this preference, to meet with the committee, or to provide a tour of the project. We fully intend to complete the historic improvements to the building exterior. That was the remainder, was the 2 front door sills and essentially a bunch of masonry work on the brick and the granite. We fully intend to complete the historic improvements to the building exterior in the summer, fall of 2026, pending additional funding. We have been encouraged by Historic Preservation Massachusetts to apply for $10,000 for these improvements in 2026, and we will apply to the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund for the remainder. So that's what we submitted on our report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Other questions that people have? Just to go back, we had, sorry. Just to go back on what we had originally funded, we had originally funded the bit of masonry work and the windows as part of that $45,000. And obviously it's now not enough. So they are asking for us to allow them to provide funds for just the windows. And they will get the additional funds that they need to be able to make it all work. So does anybody have any questions?
Meaning this will just be for the windows, not the casing part of it? The
Well, no,
original
that
proposal?
cost includes buying the windows, knocking out the brick that's been blocking them in, not brick, but cement blocks have been filling them in for all those years. Taking out the old windows where there are some, painting, everything, building the frames, installing them. So that's installed.
So you're not asking for more money,
No.
you're just Using the money differently.
Yes, we didn't want to get to the end of this and say, we spend it all on one portion of the project and nothing on the other. We didn't actually detail in our proposal, like a breakdown between the two, because it's all construction cost, but I just wanted to
That's fair.
make sure so that it was,
We appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Since I wasn't part of the original, just give me a little bit of background. What building are we talking about?
oh yeah, it's 15 Bank Row. It's
Okay.
between, do you know where that is? It's between the Magpie
Uh-huh.
Pizzeria place and the empty bank.
Okay, and who's telling you to match the windows?
20 years ago, we did renovation before my time and got a preservation restriction with Massachusetts Historic Commission, which basically says anytime we want to make any significant change to the exterior or the interior, we need to get their approval.
So this is a building that Massachusetts itself has put on some sort of a rule and not Greenfield?
Right, it is, we opted into that agreement. I think we got like a $30,000 grant
Mhm.
and agreed for the rest of ownership of the building to get their approval on every change.
And the reason I'm asking the question is because the planning board is in the process of trying to put together what we call building design guidelines
Uh-huh,
so that we can try and maintain the look and feel of buildings downtown.
yeah.
To our knowledge, there's nothing there that does that as of now. So I was just
Yeah.
very curious as to why you said someone told you you have to match these windows.
Yeah.
So if you enter into a Massachusetts preservation agreement,
Yes.
they have some
restrictions.
sort of guidelines that tells you this?
They do. And you have to appeal to them
Mhm.
by writing a report saying this is what we plan to do. So we hired a consultant that specializes in that.
Okay.
Paid them $6,000 to help us navigate the process because
Mhm.
it's quite difficult.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I
I
can
will
also
say
speak to that as well if you have extra questions. Basically, once it's on the state's list of protected buildings, it inherits a special kind of legal status for protected status. And normally it only extends to the exterior, but it sounds like because you have that preservation restriction,
Yeah.
it applies also to the inside.
Yeah.
Normally, it would only apply to like front-facing, street-facing views, but because the windows themselves are part of the historic building and they're going for the whole look, it sounds like, actually, I would be fully for it myself, but it does sound like it would be on the macros database for the whole state, so we can look that up too if you have any questions later.
Anyone else have any questions for Sam around this? Garth, Jack?
No, it seems like they're still using the money for like what we approved it for. It just doesn't go as far. I would move that we accept their updated project plan.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion about that? Okay, then seeing none, I'm gonna call the roll. Okay, Becky,
Yes.
Wisty,
Yes,
Garth,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Sam would like to thank you for coming and for letting us know about this ahead of time. But the alteration in your plan has been approved.
Great.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you all, and I'm gonna excuse myself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
If it's okay, can I have a copy of that document just so I can put it in the minutes, just to make sure it's accurate?
The
want
report
me to
that I
just
just
email-
read
oh,
is.
Yes, please. Unless it's online and I can just get it emailed, that works too. Whatever's
I
easier.
can- This is,
Oh, yeah, I'll
You can
email
have
it to
both.
you.
Oh,
I
yeah,
can
okay.
actually do it right
great, thanks, Ann.
Okay,
I have,
great.
I have a
Um,
piece of new business too before we move on.
Excuse me?
I have a small piece of new business too that
Okay,
is,
okay,
it's minor.
yeah. Okay.
Back when I made appointments with the library to have outreach sessions available to
Mhm.
the public, we also put on the calendar one upcoming in November on the 8th from 10 to 1. And that would actually be maybe an interesting time because at that point, I think we'll have gone public
Okay.
with the application.
We've got the public outreach discussion.
Oh, you
A
do?
little bit later in
See
the agenda.
I'm
So
so sorry.
no, that's okay. It's just, public meeting law is requires us to have everything on the agenda. That's the only reason I'm asking for what this is about. Okay, so why don't we move on? to the question of the Church of St. James and Andrew. Take it.
Right. So the Church of St. James and Andrew had submitted a pre-application for a fiscal year 26 project looking to do historic renovations on their buildings on Church Street. When we talked about it last month, it seemed like the sense of the group was that what they were proposing was pretty well in the bounds of the CPA, but the State Community Preservation Coalition strongly recommends getting an opinion from the city attorney before you do work on a church. So that's what we did. He gave me a written opinion, which I can share with the committee. I'll email it to each of you. It's confidential to us, so just don't share the full text of it with the public, but it's just to sort of guide how you look at at their application when it ultimately comes in, because the attorney thinks that this is definitely an okay project. And the sort of long and short of the opinion is that he's looking at both the motivation of this committee in giving funds to a church and what the effect of those funds would be on the church. And he finds that clearly our motivation is historic preservation as a public good. We don't have a religious or any kind of targeted motivation with it, and that the effect would also generally be a public good, in particular because the building that they're looking to do the historic preservation on is largely, not exclusively, but largely used for secular purposes. So it's their sort of administrative buildings on Church Street, not the chapel or the rectory, which is on Federal Street. So that's sort of the test to keep in mind if and when their project is submitted. He also looked favorably on the fact that none of the historic items in the building that they're looking to renovate have a particularly religious significance. So the state court case where the SJC had ruled against a town giving CPA funds to a church, they had restored a stained glass window with pretty significant religious iconography, and the court took issue with that. So that's the opinion, and we've told the church that they can go ahead and submit their historic preservation application.
Any questions for Anna on that? No, okay. Then the other thing we need to look at is the Miller's Meadow pre-application.
Yeah, so this was one where you guys had basically voted, I believe the exact vote was no, it doesn't qualify unless Stuart from the State Community Preservation Coalition tells us otherwise, which we did not expect him to say yes, but he actually said a kind of maybe. So I'm going to try to explain what he said, and we can parse it together. But basically what he said is that even though the Miller's Meadow parcel is currently conservation land, there are sometimes projects that create recreational land on top of an existing conservation land. And the example he gave was creating a new hiking trail on land that had already been preserved as conservation land. So it's creating a new use. And he basically said that it was a question we could decide locally whether we think that that's exactly the case with Miller's Meadow. As you guys will recall, they've already done a decent amount of work there. It's an ongoing project. They definitely are trying to create it, or I said the word create, and that I think is kind of what this hinges on, but they are trying to effectuate a recreation area that can be broadly used, and they have started, but arguably not completed that. So that's kind of where the question comes down to.
So considering all of that, because this was one of those questions of does it fit or does it not fit within the matrix that we use to be able to establish that it fits the law. It's basically on us. If we believe that this is developing a new use for that land, then we can say yes and they can move forward. If we do not think that this is a new use, basically, then we say no. That's what it comes down to. So do I have thoughts on this? Misty?
And Susan, is it specifically to work on the invasive plants that are along the riverbank?
It's a combination of that and also they've been planting trees.
Mhm.
They've been planting a whole lot of trees there. So they're changing essentially what that land is going to look like eventually. It may not be showing up for a few years, but
Okay.
that's the purpose of
Okay.
what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll repeat what I remember Athena's argument being, which again, we can buy or not buy, but basically that by clearing the invasives and planting new pollinators, it's changing the view that you can see when you go there. It's changing the experience of using the space. It is arguably changing the ecology of the space to make it a nice place to walk around in.
Mhm.
Perhaps I'm being simplistic about this, but we're a preservation committee, correct? Not our creation committee. So, I mean, if
gotta see
someone's
the chart.
making something new out of something, I
Mhm.
don't think that fits with us whatsoever. If there had been a hiking trail there or some sort of recreation that's fallen to disuse and through whatever needs to be restored, I could probably bend a little bit. But to actually create, which is the word you slipped out and said, but I don't think it fits at all within our, but that's just my point of view.
Other thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So my only concern, I mean, I guess I have a couple concerns. One concern is that previously when I met with Stuart, he said, don't look at what other towns are doing because they don't always do it right and they might actually not be following the law. So just to point that out. And then I believe Stuart said here that in order for it to be creating, like in that example, you need to be adding a new use. So it needs to be adding recreation where there's currently no recreation on the property. And people already use that property for recreation. So this seems like it would be rehabilitating and changing the recreation. But I mean, I know people call it the dog park sometimes, like they walk their dogs and they walk by the river and there's, a road that goes down and people park. And so to me, it's not actually creating, it's changing and adding to the recreational opportunities, but that's the same thing as a city park adding, adding to an existing park. They're changing and adding new things to the existing recreation, and that falls under rehabilitation and restoration. So, like, if this was fully forested and no one ever went there, I could understand, like, yeah, if you're adding a trail that is creating recreation where there is none, but in this case there already is recreation. And also I was just looking at their description again, and essentially they talk about they want to create wildlife habitat, improve climate resiliency. It doesn't really talk about, like, I'm on the Conservation Commission. Like, I know eventually the plan is to, create trails and things like that, but it doesn't sound like that's part of what they're trying to do with this pre-application. And again, like, I would love for conservation land to be able to get money to do things like this, but I'm also really a stickler for the rules. And so and especially when, when something is trying to be bent in your favor, I feel like that's when I push back even more, because I'm like, well, I got to make sure I'm really not, just wanting it to happen. So just to be the bad guy again, I'll say all that.
Other
Sorry.
thoughts?
So can,
Sorry, who wants to go first?
no, you can go for it.
So I would actually push back on that because the creation of trails on an existing conservation area is I think different from what's happening there. Because there's a road there doesn't necessarily mean that it's it's a park, it's for recreation. I had no idea that the place even had a name until I saw it in the paper. I would argue that it's not so much an established park as it is an empty lot that has been repurposed and people go there to recreate, not that it's put aside for recreation. It's not a designated park. It's not been set aside for that purpose. It may be that people go there to achieve that goal on their own, but it's not, a designated area for that. And if they're using the native plants to create pathways and to create the trails, I would say that that's the creation of a new source of recreation out of what is essentially right now kind of an empty space.
Okay. Jack?
So there's a conservation restriction currently. Will they add a recreation restriction? Is that what Stuart is alluding to, Anna? That if we allow multiple use as a committee? I'm trying to understand what his exact wording to you was. Just to be a
Okay.
stickler like Travis.
I think the question is it being is there a layer of recreational use being created on top of it? And my understanding is for that to happen, it would have to then fall under the recreation department. Is that
No,
No.
that's not true because I'm trying to find the language right now, but I think the language preserving the land, I think it specified that it is for conservation and passive recreation purposes.
the language around Miller's Meadow specifically, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot, most conservation land in Greenfield at least is for conservation and passive recreation. So I don't think it would, so I think it's already protected for recreation and open space. Even just being under the control of the Conservation Commission, I think that it does that. So I don't think it would need another restriction, and I don't think it would need to go to the Recreation Commission. And it would take a lot to be moved under the Recreation Commission anyway.
Garth?
I'm looking up the language.
Yeah, yeah, my understanding from the pre-app that this was about, altering and enhancing like an open space thing, not a recreation thing, right? Right, they're planting trees and maybe cutting some amount of stuff somewhere. We haven't seen the full app, but it's not really a recreation project, right? And the issue was it's like enhancing an open space thing that was acquired with FEMA funds, not with CPA funds.
Yeah, that's right. They had originally proposed it as a creation of open space project, but it seemed clear that couldn't be allowed because it already is conservation land. So the recreation angle is trying to find an angle to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Just to point out one sentence from the deed, it says the property shall be used only for purposes compatible with open space, recreational, or wetlands management practices. Just to point that out.
Okay, so we're still between a rock and a hard place here, it sounds like.
But that means that it is already serving recreation purposes.
Correct.
So it does potentially fit as a recreation project?
No, it doesn't fit as a recreation project because it is not under official the land is owned not by the rec department, but by the Conservation Commission.
Can't there ever be overlap? I mean, you said there could be, Anna, right, in the letter, there can be overlap of recreation and conservation roles in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point is that uh in order for this to fit as creation of recreation, it has to not have any recreation currently. And that by doing this project, it will add recreation to an existing conservation land. So what Jack was saying, isn't this recreation already? That would mean that they can't create recreation because there's already recreation.
But it isn't official recreation.
Well, it's deed restricted as recreation and open space. But this is where I don't. So just for my own, this is my own personal belief on it, but the the Community Preservation Act was originally created to preserve open space so people could have money to buy open space for the cities. And then they had to like add in all this other stuff over time to make it, make people want to do it more. And, the rehabilitation of open space and recreation, that wasn't allowed at all for, unless you had purchased it, because they wanted people to be purchasing land. They didn't want people rehabilitating land. And so, but cities were so mad that they couldn't rehabilitate their parks that they got state law to change so that they could do that to parks. But I don't think the conservation commissions had as much pull to get the state law changed so that you could rehabilitate conservation land too. So
Part of the issue is that this is not a park. This is not officially a park.
not a park, it's conservation land. Yeah, so it's not managed by the Parks Department.
Well, so
It's conservation land, and it doesn't feel like what they're proposing is adding to the recreation or any variation of recreation, unless you're like, it's better recreation if you get to look at different trees. I mean, I think that maybe the easy out is like, well, you can apply, right? I mean, any of this is sort of like, our suggestion is, we don't think this is valid. Someone could still send in something and, we can vote it down or not later.
I'd like to note that Donna has joined the meeting and she has something to say.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I think maybe we started at 5 and I forgot. This is a really tough thing because what they are proposing is a really good thing. They're
Right.
talking about all this reclamation and getting rid of invasive species. And I don't know. I mean, I can hear everyone, with the pros and cons of just the law, but I just feel like it would be great if we could make this work some way, because it feels like a really laudable endeavor. And it feels like the CPC law is not necessarily, or CPA is not necessarily meeting the needs of what we want to do here. So just saying.
Yeah, I've got a comment too.
Sure. Christine.
My understanding, and I'm not sure about this because I really haven't talked directly, but I think is the focus on the river bank area. And partly why I'm bringing that up is I went to look at that the other day because I have my own invasive thing that I'm working on. And I want to say that that river bank area is pretty terrible. And that is not a place where people can walk now.
Mhm.
So in saying what I'm going to say, I don't know if it'll work for them or against them. it'll be multi-years of working on that area, but if they start that now, cleaning up those invasives, my understanding is they hope that people will have access to the water. And there's a huge thing about having the Green River be improved and maybe people having more access to the water. So I think that I would say laudable, and that again, there is not, people are not hiking there unless they're walking through rose bushes that are over their heads. So I second what Donna is saying about that.
Any other discussion on this? Any other thoughts?
The only other thing that I'll add from their pre-application is that it says, it talks about tree planting and planting the wildlife meadow, and then doing work on invasives. And oh man, where did that go? You know, you're always reading something, and then when you go to say it, if someone else has something, I can come back to me.
I'm wondering if this is a question where we would direct them. What I'm thinking is that I think in terms of the tree planting and that part of it, there may be some question about whether it fits within the CPA guidelines, because it's not, they've begun this process and that area is already used as a recreation area. But if we direct them to ask us for support around cleaning the invasives and making the availability of the area to the water, that might be a way in which we could fund them. And I'd like to hear thoughts on that.
Well, I'm just thinking, because they already have a restriction, in reading the open space, if they're going on this ocean, river, stream frontage discussion, it kind of seems like that could be preservation of open space. But then I also wonder, since it does say recreation, do they want to look at what their ask to us is and better define perhaps that's what they're looking at? Because my understanding is when we were doing pre-applications for folks, we could give them feedback as to, well, it's not quite eligible for this, but it sounds like you're trying to expand on a recreation or rehabilitate a recreation area. And that kind of seems like it is an allowed space, allowed option since the 2012 amendment that the CPA did.
Other comments? Do I have a motion then in any way, shape, or form?
The only other comment I have, just going back to what he was just saying, is that you know, in the last meeting we were looking at that web page where it was talking about how it all goes back to the land, and if it's, to me it doesn't seem like we could say that this is rehabilitating a recreation land, since it's conservation land, even though there's conservation land allows recreation on it. Do you know what I mean?
But I
know,
think
it's
it says
complicated.
all three things though, Travis, right? If you read what the deed restriction is, it does use the word recreation, right? Conservation and recreation. And I
Yeah.
thought that was the idea of the CPA putting that they have to have the restriction, because we want to ensure that our funds continue to be used in the purpose, and both of those purposes are eligible, I feel like.
Donna?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're really just we're running up against semantics here. And we have a project that makes a lot of sense, but doesn't fit neatly into any of the CPA boxes. And, you know, part of this conversation is about how do we make it fit? But then there's another part of me that says, you know, maybe what we need to do is question it. Make a case for it being a project that CPA should recognize, you know. I know that's like painfully changing what the CPA says right now, but it also feels like it might be a correction because, you know, this is a fairly new act and we've all been figuring it out over the last few years. You know, I don't want to go to the Supreme Court, but it kind of feels like, is this one of those instances?
I'm just gonna go back to what I
Go
said
ahead,
earlier.
Victor.
I mean, preservation and rehabilitation to me both mean that there's something there to do something with. If you've got an empty lot and you say it's recreation, what's the recreation you're doing? What's the recreation are you playing softball on it? You need a new field? Are you playing soccer? It doesn't fit in my mind with what we're supposed to do. We're either preserving or rehabilitating something that already exists. I don't think our goal, from what I understand, is to create something new on a piece of property that may be listed as recreation, but if there's been no recreation there, I mean, someone trying to walk down to the river is not necessarily, in my mind, recreation, unless it's been designated for that. There's a sign somewhere that says, here, hey, come here and walk down to the river. It sounds like they're just trying to use something that might make us feel good to get money for something that they want to do, which I'm not saying it's not a good project, but our funds are limited, our budgets are limited. We need to use it where it's most intended and easily fits too. It sounds like we're trying to talk ourselves into this when it doesn't fit from the beginning. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. If they want to come back with some other application and some other wording or some other time, we can certainly look at it. But the application they've submitted, from what I understand, sounds like it just doesn't fit. That's my 2 cents.
No,
Can I
Go ahead.
read part of Stuart's email?
sure.
I did get forwarded Stuart's email. So he said, the Miller's Meadow project is an interesting one. Land under control of the CONSCOM is considered open space on the CPA allowable uses chart. You are correct that building the meadow on open space conservation land is not creation on the allowable uses chart. The land is already dedicated to conservation purposes, so building a new asset on that land is rehabilitation of conservation land. And rehabilitation is not allowed on open space conservation land unless the land was acquired or created with CPA funds. We don't know much about pollinator gardens, but could they be considered a recreational asset? Here's a definition of land for recreational use, and then he gives the definition. He said, if the pollinator garden is considered to be a recreational asset, then they likely could recommend using CPA funds to create recreation land on CONCOM's parcel. And then he talks about doing that with trails. So it sounds like, I mean, to me, it would have to be very specific. Like he's already saying the meadow's out, or the meadow. And then I think with the pollinator garden, I think the way I'm imagining him reading that is like, is this a garden that people are going to be like planting in and harvesting from, like that kind of garden where it's recreation? That's what I'm imagining he's thinking because a pollinator garden and a meadow are kind of the same, they're kind of like the same
yeah.
thing. So anyway.
Well, okay, so partly then what I hear you saying, Travis, is it's not thinking about the river bank, it's thinking about the pollinator garden and meadow that they have started working on already. Well, and I would say that is recreation, like when you think of the now famous High Line, the refurbished subway in New York City, more and more they're asking people, get out and walk, get in nature. And so we need places that will draw people to nature. So I kind of wish that they would, that the people submitting this would get more particular about what it is they want to do with that money so that we could make a decision.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'd like to make a motion that we get back to these folks, letting them know that if this is creation of recreation, it appears to be eligible. However, open space is deemed not eligible because it is it's rehabilitation and it wasn't purchased or acquired by CPA funds. That's my motion, if it was clear.
Yeah, no, it's clear. It's clear. Is there a second?
Sure. Second.
Okay, is there discussion about this motion? Good.
Jack, can you just say that a little bit more in
Yeah, so-
English?
So my feeling is that, again, we're not voting whether we're going to fund this project or not, but it appears in the matrix that we all have to follow, deeming something eligible or not, that if they're deciding to create recreation on this existing area that they originally came to us about rehabilitating open space, they could do recreation, but they cannot do exactly what they originally came to us because it falls into a box that is not eligible. So
So
again,
would they-
we'll still vote on this whether or not we want to fund it, but our only job in this beginning stages is to see if something is eligible. And so it could be if they present it in this recreation planning mind or goal.
In their full application?
That's correct.
Full application, yes.
That's correct.
I have one question. Will we
Sure.
look for specific recreation? They can't just use the word, we're going to create recreation.
No, they would have to tell us what they're, they'd
Very-
have to tell
very
us specifically what they're going to,
What
what they're going to be
recreation is
doing.
they're creating. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and that can be creating walking trails, but they need to be clear about what they're planning to do. If, are there any other comments on this before we go to a vote?
Oh,
Is- Oh,
you talking?
Donna, did you want to say something? No, okay.
Can I just ask if you have it handy, how much money they asked for this?
They didn't say,
Oh, they didn't
They-
say yet.
the pre-apps didn't say.
Yep.
They don't,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to bring this to a vote. And what we're voting on is the motion that Jack put forward, basically a directive to this group that this is what we're looking for, that we're looking for how, more specifics on how they would make this a recreational a recreational site, basically.
And sorry, is it only, are we saying that we would only be funding anything that is adding recreation? Is that what we're saying to them? Like, we can only fund this, any part of it that's only if it's adding recreation to the site?
Basically, yes.
Yeah, that's my motion, Travis, because that's the only
Okay.
thing that's apparently eligible. Because that's what
Yeah.
our only job right now is to tell them what is eligible, because originally what they gave us isn't.
Okay, and it's not just limited to the meadow part, right?
Right, right.
It would also include the riverbank part.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, have we enough clarity on this to be able to vote on it? Okay, then a yes vote would be to send this directive to them. A no vote is to basically say, no, you're not eligible. Okay. All right, Becky,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes,
Wisty,
Yes,
Garth,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes,
Travis,
Yes.
Jack.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. was a hard job, but we did it. And I thank everybody for going through this, because this is the kind of stuff that drives us all crazy, especially when we see something that we think is a good possibility for the community. Okay, moving on to old business. Is there anything we need to do around reviewing the application process and the plan schedule for the review meetings? Review meetings will be starting in January. And what we'll be doing at the December 3rd meeting, among other things, we'll be setting a schedule for those review meetings. But is there any?
We'll have all the full applications in at that point.
That is correct. We will have the full applications on, as of November 17th. And while we won't be discussing them at the December 3rd meeting, we will figure out what it looks like, because we don't know. We really don't know. There may be some group that we think is going to apply and does not apply, and that may change how many meetings we need to have. So it'll be a question of setting that up. Are there any questions or things about that we need to discuss in terms of the application process at this point? Okay, seeing none, we can talk about public outreach. And Becky, why don't you bring your stuff up?
Well, we had 2 sessions, one of which was, I would call it fairly well attended, given that it's only a couple of hours sitting at the library and people aren't expecting you to be there necessarily unless there's a really good campaign in advance. So one session, though, we didn't have anyone. And the next one we have scheduled is the 8th of November. It's a Saturday, excuse me, 10 to 1. And I wasn't clear about who would like to be part of that, other than Wisty and I did one and Jack and I did one together, but I found it to be a really good way to learn about the process, Victor, just in case you might be available. So we have this scheduled, but if no one can go, I need to think about another time. The library's been very open to our being there.
Okay. What do folks think? Do you want to have another session at this time, or do you want to let the library know that we're not going to be doing that? And, because it's kind of we're at a point where we can't accept new applications, but it is a time when we can talk to people about them. Donna?
So there are a number of community events coming up that might be worthwhile to partner with or on or be available at. The Halloween downtown in Greenfield that the rec department does might be a little bit too busy, but there is Jingle Fest in the weekend of December 5th, 4th, 5th. And there are a number of activities that are happening downtown. So I just put that out there as that might be a place where you could connect with people and know that there's going to be a crowd.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Britt.
This is an issue that I think we brought up before, maybe a couple of months ago. And I did it with Becky the second time. And I had a delightful time with Becky, but really, we didn't have any takers at all. And I think we need to even have some photographs, some boards, I don't know what you call them, but some things that will catch people's eye to come over. Because otherwise, it's just 2 people just sitting there. And people don't really have anything. Where if it's photos, if it's something that attracts people there, you don't know what's going to happen. But for me, I think until we have something like that that would be appealing and a draw to people, I think I would rather not do it. I mean, I had a really nice time with Becky. For real.
And we did have some pictures, but Anna has made some new things that I'm aware of. But the other thing is that it's a good opportunity, maybe not this particular date, but at some point before decisions are made, I think it's good to get out in in the community and say, these are all the applications we got. And these are the ones that fit what we're doing as really good examples of what you might think about in the
Okay.
future.
All right, let me, I want to clarify.
We not talk.
I want, no, 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 I want to, I just want to clarify something that you're saying before we go on to Garth and Jack. What are you thinking that the role of this outreach at this particular time is? Because it's kind of in the middle of the process. And so I'm just trying to get an understanding of what your goal is here with this particular thing. I mean, if we did it in March, for instance, when we're waiting for community feedback from when we have our questionnaire out and all of that, and we also want to be at the at the table and say, these are the things that we've been hearing about. What do you think? That's one way to do it. It does not mean that, we'd have to figure out a way to make sure that we had that information as part of our overall structure of evaluation. But that would be one way. At this point, I'm not sure that we have anything to share like that with folks. And so I'm questioning what the goal is at this point. But I'd like to hear from Garth and from Jack before anything else. Garth? Go for it.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be more or less my point. It feels like we're a little bit in between. It feels like it would be better to do outreach when we have all the projects in and we're like, hey, here's the projects, here's the questionnaire, and like you can, the next cycle will be starting in May, June. You can be thinking about projects for there. That feels like probably possibly a better use of time than doing something in this in between portion.
Jack?
Yeah, that was my point exactly. So I think that not that it would be a complete waste of your time, because even if we were able to connect with one person, I think it's valuable. But I think there's really two outreaches needed. One for trying to get people to apply. It's too late right now. And the second is to get feedback from the projects we're potentially approving. I think we could talk about spreading the good name of the CPC and the funds and what we're doing as like a bonus, but I feel like you'd be wasting your time on the 8th because there wouldn't be a solid goal.
I'm happy not to give up a Saturday. It was on the calendar. I needed to bring it to the meeting and see what people thought. And now I know.
One of the things I think this brings up, though, is that once we have our calendar of going through the applications, we should also think about having a day at the library where we use our valuation forms and we give those out as if people come in and we tell them and we figure out a way to present, what these applications are. That's going to be a little tricky, but we need to, once we have the applications, we can figure that out. And I understand we're getting a new person coming in who's going to be helping us. Is that correct? No, helping. No, I maybe I shouldn't have said that. Amy said to me that there's a new staff person coming on.
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right. So we'll be having a new person coming in.
Help you.
You don't know they're helping us? Okay. Well, we'll wait on that till we know more. But if that makes sense, then let's put that as part of what we're going to think about when we think about the schedule, when we're going through December. So once we know how many sessions we're doing in terms of review, we can also think about, well, let's say 2 weeks after our last review, are we going to do something? Or 3 weeks after our last review, are we going to do something before we do our final vote? And so I think we need to probably do the whole plan in terms of when we're going to have our vote and when we're going to present to the council so that we have an idea of when we might be able to have this happen. Does that all make sense? Yes? No? I mean,
Yeah.
yes? Okay. Okay. So with that, we can move on. Do we have any updates? Nope, no, yeah, this is updates of previously funded projects. Sometimes we have things that we need to either know about or applaud or whatever. Okay, so with that, our next meeting is December 3rd. The question is where? Donna, since you were, can you make a 5 o'clock meeting in December?
Yeah, I could have made this one. I remember we talked about it and I didn't put it on my calendar, so my bad, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. You were the one person who was uncertain about whether a 5 o'clock meeting would work. With that understanding, for the 3rd of December, do we have a spot, Anna?
No. So the 3rd is a Wednesday. Thursdays are usually pretty doable. Wednesdays get packed with other there's so many committees now, and not enough rooms. So I shouldn't put them on blast, but I had a thought that maybe we could edge out whoever is using the library room. But none of the regular city rooms are available then. And we have to meet both in
Right.
person and online.
Right.
Yeah.
We decided on Wednesday because there were conflicting meetings on Thursday, correct? Okay. All right, so if we, no, she's already checked that. That's yeah. So,
I don't think so. I can check again for that specific date.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we leave it at the 3rd? And you will let us know super quick?
Yeah.
About, whether we have that, because if we don't and we have to change the date, we're gonna have to figure that all out. And so we'll have to,
Might have to do a doodle poll.
yes, we'll have to do a doodle poll and figure it out, and everybody will have to look at their schedules once again. Okay, so let's say the anticipated date is December 3rd at 5 for our next meeting. And with that, I will entertain motion.
Can I ask one more thing? And it's related to what we were just talking about, the outreach. I have had a couple people say to me, would something like this be eligible for CPC? And I don't know how, I don't know when we could offer something maybe at the library, I don't know where, but to just be available. So if people have just a rough idea, if a couple of us could be there and could even suggest how they would begin investigating or the kind of information we would want that they could start collecting, I think that might be helpful to people. So if we just considered that.
The Greenfield Local Cultural Council has just gone through their granting process, and as part of it, for the first time, they held office hours. They had to be careful about how many members could be there because of quorum, but basically a drop-in where you could talk to a member of the committee and just kind of pitch your project and see if it fit.
Okay. Donna?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Greenfield Public Library calendar and I don't see anything in the conference room on December 4th.
Third.
3rd, okay, wait a minute, hold on. So, yeah. So the community room would be the one we want, and there's nothing in the community room on December 3rd in the evening. I'd be happy to put in a request if I could do that right now, if that would be helpful.
Please do, just in case we can use it, but are you sure that that's the one with the Zoom capability?
Yeah, the community room is the big room and I'll definitely make sure. But yeah, why don't you let me work on that and I can get back to you? And that way we can feel a little bit more confident about our plan.
Great, thank you, Donna.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, again, I will offer the opportunity for someone to make a motion here.
Motion to adjourn.
And there's a second. All those in favor, I have to, so I don't think we have to do this one with a roll call, do we? No, yeah. Oh, we'll do a roll call. All right. All right, just in case, just in case. Becky,
Right,
Donna,
yes,
Wisty,
Yes.
Garth,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very, very
All right.
much, and we'll see you in December.